The History Behind the Magna Carta by
Quinn
and Analia.
Hi, welcome to our National History Day podcast. Today I'll be focusing on the topic of
the Magna Carta.
In this podcast, you will learn about the king's perspective, why the English barons made the Magna Carta, and what really happened in the field of Runnymede.
Enjoy! The king's perspective and some interesting background information. King Richard was Prince John's older brother. He assumed the role as King of England after their father, King Henry II, passed. King Richard's reign lasted for 10 years, and throughout those years, he fought many wars and battles for England. His conquests required large sums of money to fund them. He taxed his people heavily, but they did not mind since they were fond of King Richard. When King John became king, he decided to keep the taxes, although they weren't funding anything but pure greed and a failing war. His barons became enraged and decided they needed to do something about the unfair taxes being imposed upon them.
Anna, I have a few questions for you. Did the barons agree with the war in France?
Well, Quinn, King John was using the tax money to fund his failing war with France. The barons thought the dispute between King John and the King of France was none of their concern, so they refused to pay the extra taxes that were being imposed upon them.
Also, do you think he would have lowered his taxes if he knew the barons were mad?
That's a really good question, Quinn. Let's keep listening.
Why did the barons make the Magna Carta? King John of England at the time, in his increasing assumption of powers, created resentment among many in England, particularly his barons. The English barons tried hard to protect themselves and the public from approaches of royal authority taking over their rights. Among the main arguments against the king was that he demanded too much money from the people in taxes. The barons were also aware of the king's decreasing power. After John waged a disastrous war in France, the barons agreed to compel him to respect the rights of his people. The barons presented King John with a series of demands that would help him respect them. King John made sure to avoid giving in to them, leading the barons to end their allegiance to him. They marched against King John in May 1215 and soon captured London.
Now that we have gathered some information about the topic, it seems that the king knew his barons were mad, but he still didn't lower the taxes.
Correct.
What consequences did the king bring upon himself after ignoring the barons?
To answer your question, the consequence of his actions was a threat of civil war. But when presented with the Magna Carta, do you think he affixed his seal to the document? Let's keep listening a bit more to figure out the answer. What happened at the field of Runnymede? Forced to meet the barons at Runnymede, a meadow by the Thames, King John affixed his seal to the Magna Carta on June 15, 1215. Careful provision was made in the Magna Carta for limiting royal taxes and assessments and for reforming laws and governing procedures. In addition, the Magna Carta provided certain guarantees for the people as a whole. Although much of the document dealt with federal rights and duties, it also included provisions to protect the rights of the church merchants and townspeople. The Magna Carta stated that people cannot be punished for crimes unless they were lawfully convicted. The charter also gave the barons the right to declare a civil war on the king if he did not follow its provisions.
So it mostly focused on the rights of people and holding the king responsible for his actions, correct?
Yes, it mainly focused on putting laws into place to prevent the problems the English barons were facing.
The aftermath of the Magna Carta. Following the signing of the Magna Carta, King John was enraged and felt that his rights as a king were being impeded on. In secret, he sent a letter to the Pope persuading them to abolish the Magna Carta. He lied, saying that he signed the document against his will. The Pope agreed with John, and he began attacking the barons individually. A civil war began and ended with the dethroning of King John and the crowning of his 9-year-old son, King Henry III.
Do you think the king's dethroning was just an effect of the Civil War, or do you think it was more complicated than that?
It was definitely more complicated. When you look at the bigger picture, you see that his dethroning was inevitable. He had been taxing the people unfairly, started a civil war against France because of the dispute between King John and the King of France, and overall, he felt that he was above the law and ignored his responsibilities as king. Now it's time for a summary of today's podcast. The Magna Carta was created because King John of England thought he was above the law
and therefore he discarded his responsibilities as king, causing the English barons to lose rights as an effect of the king's careless ruling of England. With the threat of civil war, the Magna Carta was created to protect the citizens' rights and responsibilities.
That's all for today. Thanks for listening. Bye.